Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Welcome to another edition of Iconic Creators. I am your host, Baxter Colburn. I'm excited because on today's episode, we have someone that I feel like understands what it takes to work in multiple industries and find success in multiple industries. She is someone that I have been a big fan of for a long time, and I would say probably the last year and a half or so, we've become friends and we've worked on projects together, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of merge our worlds together a little bit as well. She is the owner of Miller Highlights, which is an amazing marketing and photo and video agency based here in the general Green Bay area. She can give you more specific geolocations, but that's the general area for you, for those that are from outside of the Wisconsin area listening. It is the wonderful, the amazing, the ever-talented, and full of sass, Taylor Miller. Hello, Taylor. Welcome to the podcast.
What's up, buddy? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you here. And we were talking before we went on because I was like, how do I introduce you properly? I was like, because I can be very professional, right? And say you're the owner of Miller Highlights, which is obviously true. But what did I say? I said you're a connoisseur of content creation because you do so many different things as well, similar to what I do. And I felt like that is a more appropriate way to be like, this is an umbrella of who you are, right?
Mm-hmm. Like I said before, I have many different buckets that I am involved in. So
that makes
that's a great
sense.
Introduction, though.
Yeah, thank you.
I
try to have a fun introduction prepared for people, right? Just to make it interesting, because that, as you know, is half the battle of maintaining a viewer or a listener, right? You have to hook them in with something, right, a little bit. So typically, I try to make them a little bit more fun. I want to get right into you and a little bit of your backstory, because some of the listeners may not know much about you. I always am curious to learn more about people as well. Talk to me a little bit about Miller Highlights, where that came from, and what it was that you did in the beginning, because if I'm not mistaken, what you do now is maybe not exactly what you started doing in the beginning, right? Or you've backed off a little bit from the original intent?
Yeah, I've definitely backed off a bit. So Miller Highlights started back in 2018. I was a sophomore in college, and I had a friend of mine that I worked with came up to me and was like, "Hey, Taylor, are you available to shoot my wedding?" In college, I was a videographer for the university. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then at that point, I had no idea what to charge. So when I tell you this number, Baxter, you are going to be like, there is no way that you shot that.
Can I guess? Can I guess?
Sure.
Tell me what you did first, and then I'll guess.
What did I do?
Like, what was your package? What did you do? Like, what was the deliverables or time spent?
I want to say she got the whole thing. Like, she got the whole package. It was a lot of time spent on it because obviously it was my first one. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Sure. So full day of shooting, editing. What was the deliverable length of the video? Do you remember? 8 minutes, 6 minutes?
I think the highlight alone was probably 4 minutes, and then the rest of it was full edits of the ceremony and speeches, I believe.
400 sticks in my head because that feels stupid low for the work that you did, but you might have been even cheaper than that based off of your face.
Yeah, so I actually charged $200 for that wedding.
Wow.
And I had someone help me, so I gave him $100, so the profit from that was $100. Yep. But lesson learned, you got to start somewhere, right?
But in 2018, though, I mean, $100.
Yeah.
For a college student.
As a broke college student, yeah. And I was renting equipment from Whitewater because that's where I went to school. I was renting equipment from there to shoot this wedding. So I didn't spend any investment on the equipment at that time. So it was basically a profit of $100 for me. And I had no idea where it was going to go. So, yep, I shot that wedding, posted it on social media, just like, all right, you're going to give this a shot. Posted on social media, and people started messaging me. The next year I got 2 weddings. The year after that, I expanded even more and did I want to say maybe 11, and then all the way up to 37 2 years ago. And then now I'm starting to back down a little bit. And it's funny because when I first started my business, I had no idea what to call it. No idea. And I ended up putting a poll on my Instagram story. And I was like, hey, I'm looking for advice. What should I call my company? And I put one of those boxes that people can submit the questions, to see what kind of ideas came in. And then I had like a poll voting on which ones were the best. So I kind of did it like March Madness bracket style of bringing the name down. And there was one name that someone said right away, and it stuck with me, but I wanted to see if others thought the same thing. And that's where Miller High Life came in. They're like, why don't you use your last name? And I mean, obviously, Miller High Life is a very searchable thing for beer. And if they would misspell it at some point and say High Light, there's your company. And I'm like, that's actually a smart idea. And this is coming from college kids, obviously, that are drinking every weekend because there's nothing else to do in Whitewater. So.
Yeah, right. They probably had one in their hand. If they're like,
Yep. So the company did start in the video side, doing weddings mostly. And as time has gone on, I've brought in more of my skills on the photo side, on the marketing side. And I still do weddings, but I have definitely brought that down since then. Like, I like to have my weekends a little bit more free now. I worked every weekend because I needed that money coming in. And now that I have different streams of revenue coming, I am able to let go of the weddings a little bit and pick and choose what I want to work.
I love that. I'm fascinated. I'm going to stick in the wedding vein for just a brief moment. So I've done I've done 6 weddings over the last 3 years, and I just happened to get 2 weddings a year, and that's just kind of how it worked, right? It's not a big part of what Colburn Creative is. We don't market that we do weddings, yet somehow every year we still manage to do a couple weddings, right? And people find us, and I post my work right on YouTube, and it's not hidden on my website, but like I said, I'm not running ads to be your next wedding videographer, right, type of thing. But weddings, I feel like, are such an incredibly interesting and difficult shoot because, as you and I know with the other types of content we shoot, normally you can't do it again, right? Like, you can't redo a shot. Now, if it's the bridal party, let's throw the flowers one more time, right? That's cute. You can't redo the kiss. You can't redo the first dance. Like, if you miss something or you miss it, like, that's it, right? Like, so that high amount of stress to be always on and watching, right? Like, I've seen the memes every time during wedding season where it's like me, trying to stuff my face in a back room and hearing music start to play and wondering if I'm missing the first dance, right? Like, you're like trying to run back. But did you enjoy the stress? Did you enjoy the craziness that came with it? Or is that why you ultimately have backed off from it, is because you're like, listen, man, like, self-induced stress is fun and all, but I also would like to not give up my weekends, as you mentioned, and maybe the creativity side of it. There's only so many ways to shoot a wedding, I feel like.
Right. And I mean, you said it, when it comes to, you only have one shot, one chance to get it. And I have been in those situations, even with being as skilled as I am now, I still run into those situations. So, for example, this past year, I was working a wedding. I got everything that I needed. Okay. Once it came to the editing side, my hard drive crashed, and so did my computer, and I lost everything. Yeah, and it's just crazy because there's nothing you can do about it. And I have it in my contract that if something happened like that, like, I try my best to bring it back, but ultimately there's nothing you can do in those situations. It's not like a business shoot that you can be like, oh, I need to reshoot this, no extra charge, like, we just need to redo it. But when it comes to weddings, it is that extra stress. It's like, okay, did I get that shot? Am I missing something? I am exactly like you, Baxter, when it comes to like the first dances, and I hear the music change and I'm like, what's going on? I'm not even set up. My head is on a constant swivel of trying to figure out what's happening when. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that I'm backing down on it a little bit more because of the stress. I think I'm backing down on it more of, I felt like I was losing my creativity a little bit because every weekend felt like it was the same timeline without it being the same timeline. Like, obviously there's going to be different things happening, but I needed to take that step back just a little bit so I could bring my creativity back a little bit more. So that's when I started taking on different projects when it came to video to revamp my creativity side of things.
Well, I think that shows a lot of growth too, right? Because I think sometimes we, as creatives, especially early on, and I'm sure you'll understand this too, right? You say yes to everything. You mentioned that, right? You're just trying to put money in your pocket. You're just trying to stay relevant and consistent, right? Be like, if I do another wedding or I say yes to this, then maybe somebody else will hire me, or somebody bigger will hire me, or somebody that's willing to pay more, whatever, right? Like, you run the risk of running yourself ragged because you're chasing that. And it's not until you learn that success isn't tied to a dollar amount, right? Typically, but that's what I feel like we as a society are guilty of, right? Like, oh, well, if I
Hmm.
make $200,000, then I'll be fine. Or if I make
Right.
100,000 or 50,000 or whatever that number is for people, right? Like we're chasing that number. And that I
Hmm.
think is more stress inducing because we never get to enjoy what's happening in front of us as opposed to like, yep, I got to do 10 more shoots, $2,000 each, and then I'll be good enough for the year, right? I'll feel okay, right, for the year. And it depends on what your goals are that you're
Right.
doing. But how do you not tie your success to how much money you see in your books that you've made at the end of the year, right? Like I'm guilty of that, and I'm sure so many others are as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's more of I finally figured out that money doesn't matter. It's more of the joy that you get out of the project. So I am all about doing passion projects. I am all about, sticking with the industries that I enjoy shooting and knowing that I'm to a point in my life that I can pick and choose what I want to continue to shoot or work on with like marketing clients, anyone else that I work with. I have full control of who I want to work with. And yes, has it taken me some time to stop saying yes to everybody? Absolutely. I feel like when you are an entrepreneur and you are getting your business started up, you are a people pleaser, a yes person. You will do anything just to make somebody give you a good review. I have finally made it to the point where it's like I will choose what I want to do. And yes, do I have a money mindset of like how much I want to make in a year? Of course, everyone does when it comes to the business, just knowing the expenses that are going into it and what you're actually bringing home. But there comes a point where as long as you are, you're living in a house, you have food, you have your stuff paid off, it shouldn't matter how much you're making. Especially at a young age like us, we have so much time yet where if we started, let's say 10 years from now, we're still doing okay. It doesn't matter when you start in this business, as long as you just take that leap and start, you're going to be well off.
I had the conversation. I'm trying to remember now that you said that at an age perspective. I think I was talking to might have been my son on the way to school this morning, but talking about how we were talking about my brother is a business owner. As I drop my pen here, my brother's a business owner. And he's 21, and he is trying to continue to build his business. And my son was saying how he's got to figure it out, or he's been doing this a long time, and he's obviously not nearly as big. He was also trying to compare my brother's business to Dude Perfect, and I was like, well, Dude Perfect is a
Hmm.
$100 million plus business, and I was like, those
Hmm.
guys are in their late 30s, right? Like my brother Seth, I'm like, he's 21. Like Seth in 5 years or 10 years is going to be dramatically different. My business is going to be dramatically different, right? So we have to remind ourselves that like 21 felt really old when we were 10 and 15, right? Like my son's 8, 21 seems like 20 years, years and years and years away
Right.
for him right now, right?
Hmm.
So I love those inspirational posts too. Like I don't know any of them off the top of my head, but like, the founder of XYZ was 43 when they started, right? And that's a $1 billion company. Or the founder
Hmm.
of this was 47. It's like you can do anything you want at any age and it doesn't necessarily matter, right? Like you can find success as long as you understand like what the happiness tied to that is as well, I feel. You kind of
Right. And I think that that also brings up like the comparison model too. Like society has brought us within social media that we are constantly comparing ourselves to other business owners within our industry, seeing what success they brought in and trying to, figure out how we can do that for ourselves. But it's all in your timeline. It doesn't need to happen right away. It might take 5 years, 10 years, or it might happen right away. It's just one of those things that if it clicks, it clicks.
how do you avoid that? Because I know as starting out as a videographer and photographer, I I joke with people because they're like, how did you know you wanted to do this? And I was like, well, I'm like, in the beginning, it was the fact that people just kept giving me money, and I was like, oh, okay, like there's something here, right? Like as
Right.
silly as that sounds, I'm like, I didn't go to school for it, and I
Yeah.
didn't have any formal training in it. I'm a YouTube and online course trained photo video person, and then a lot of hours, right? Like I've spent a lot of
Hmm.
time shooting a lot of different things and just figuring it out along the way, right? Like to be where I'm at now is still crazy to me. If you'd have told me that 4 years ago, I'm really, really grateful for what I do. But it's so hard to not look at the seasoned veterans and be like, gosh, I wish my stuff looked like that. Or, oh, I wish that was cool. Or how do I get to go travel to Fiji and shoot whatever, right? Like you start playing
Right.
the comparison game as you're sitting in, Green Bay, Wisconsin on a 7-degree day. You're going, what the hell am I doing with my life, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do
Yep.
you battle that? Because we both get to do some pretty cool things, but how do we remind ourselves of that that's what we're doing?
Yeah, so I used to be stuck in that mindset of comparing myself to anyone that had more followers than me or that seemed more successful than me. But I have recently started to kind of shift that mindset a little bit. So when I'm shifting that mindset, I'm shifting it as in what are my competitors doing that I am not, and trying to figure out their model. So I've really dove like I dive deep into situations where it comes to like, all right, I can see where they're doing their free offer to get people in for leads. How are they capturing those leads and actually making some money off of it? And I tell everyone whenever I do any talk on like social media branding, or if I talk on like anything on the video photo side, I always tell people we are never in competition. I used to think competition was such a great thing to have a drive, but now I don't think so.
And we
Now I
have
think
sports backgrounds
it's
too, you and I, so that makes sense, right? You're
correct,
trained to be like, I
correct,
have to be better than that school or that player in my same position,
correct.
right?
Yep.
Like, so that's where it comes from typically.
Yeah, so that's where you get the competition of like I need to get my drive from this. But now I do it as a learning experience. I'm like, all right, I sit and I evaluate all these different competitors and I see what they're doing, see what's working, and then I try to do that on my model as well. So, like I said, whenever I talk to people, I'm saying you're not competitors. No matter what industry you're in, you're not competitors. You're learning from each other. And that's how I approach my talks when I am in person and doing workshops.
I love that. And it's so interesting that you bring that up. I had Dane on from Spartan Media Works or Spartan Works Media a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. And I took a moment at the end of the interview because we talked for a long time about stuff. And I was like, I just want to take a second to acknowledge the fact that to the listener, I'm like, Dane and I do the exact same thing. And I invited
Hmm.
Dane to be on my show, and the same applies to you, to promote their business and promote them. And I'm okay with it, right? Like if you choose to call Dane
Hmm.
instead of calling me, I will be okay. If people choose to call Taylor instead of Baxter, I will be okay, right? And vice versa, right? Like I know that there's been
There's
numerous
enough
times.
work to go around.
Exactly. And I'm like, why is it so foreign, unfortunately, still in 2025, that like we can't recommend somebody else that does something that we do, right? Or that we don't do. The amount of
Hmm.
times I've tried to pass work off to other creatives that I'm like, I don't do maternity photos. I don't do a lot of wedding. Like I am constantly pushing people off to other people and say, hey, go talk to them. They're amazing at what they do. I hope that people are doing
Yep.
the same to me as well or for me as well. But like, it's not about that. But I try to pass off, right, and say, hey, I'm not available.
Hmm.
I know 5 great people that would do amazing for you, right? Like,
Yep.
why
And
can't we
I
do
do the
that?
same thing as you. Yep. I do the same thing as you. And you are one of the top ones that I refer to as well. So I'm not sure if any of them made their way to you, but it's just the thought, that counts. So yeah, I totally agree with you on all of that.
I want to go back to Miller Highlights for a moment because what I noticed early on, and when I didn't know you, and I just kind of was more of a follower of you, is that you have a team, or you did have a team. I don't know how big that team still is,
Hmm.
but I'm always fascinated by someone like myself as well that manages a team of people. Right? I have 2 editors. I have up to 5 production assistants that I will use for things as well. How do you go about managing that team when it comes to representing you, and how much control or freedom do you feel like you have and give out, because they're representing you, they're representing your brand, right? People are hiring Taylor Miller, they're hiring Baxter Colburn, but
Hmm.
you and I are different. You're crazy. You still do all your own edits, I think, right? For the most part. I
I
don't.
do. I
I got
do.
rid of that a
Yep.
long time ago, and I do a little bit, but I've learned that that's something I'm not very good at and I don't enjoy, so I outsource my edits to my editors on my team. But where do you go with that, with people management, with team management, and the representation that other people are showcasing their abilities but representing you and your brand?
Yeah, so what I do is first and foremost, as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to go through what you're going to have a team go through first, figure out what works for your system, and then from there you can delegate. Like you said, Baxter, that you outsource your editing. That is one thing that I am so nervous to give up because I can't get over that control yet. And I say yet because one day it could happen. I could give up that editing. But at the moment, I feel most in control and most being my work represented if I'm the one that's doing that side of it. Same goes with photos. I still edit all my photos too. So when it
I
comes
do
to the
all
rest of
that.
my
Yeah,
team,
photo editing and podcast editing, I won't outsource. I have somebody that'll help me if I have like a high volume of photo editing, but I try to still stick to that as much as I can.
right? Yeah. So that I'm still not fully over the control thing that I'm trying to figure out myself. And when it comes to like the marketing side, it's kind of easier to build a team up that you can trust, right? So I have one person that has been on my team since day one, since college. She has been on my support team ever since, and that is Jessica. Jessica has been able to help me. She knows all my systems. I run my marketing agency like how we ran the marketing at Whitewater when we were there, because we were both on the team for being the content creators essentially for the whole university. So her and I kind of already had our systems down without me even having to train her, say anything. I'll say, hey, I have this idea. How can we execute it? And her and I are like basically the same person when it comes to the mindset on that side of things. And then it came to a point where I knew I needed a little bit of extra help when it came to, just extra graphics for editing or even some outreach to some clients. That is when I reached out to a school, seeing if I can be in their youth apprentice program, just to bring in some youth, because one goal of mine, and it had always been a goal of mine, is to show the youth that you can do this too. Like, you don't have to. People always push, go to college, go do all this. Granted, I did go to college. I did. But you have to learn that there's other avenues. And what did I actually bring from college to my business? Yes, video editing, yes, marketing and graphic design through my job at Whitewater. But essentially, it was a lot of hands-on work that I learned along the way. So that's kind of how I brought my team on. I find people that have the same drive as I do, that can understand my nonsense when I put in a text message at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they can understand what's going through my head. And just people that I can trust, right? So I have a lot of trust in people until you lose my trust, basically. But I have never had an instant where I've lost trust on the people that I've brought on. I have trusted every single person that I've brought onto my team, and whether they're still with me or not, they have helped me along the way. So I am grateful for everyone that I've had, honestly, on my team. And if we're going to go back to more employees, great. If not, I'm okay with that too. Whatever the system is and what flow works best for us, that's the route we're going to go.
I think that's very well said, and I agree with you on that too. I had a conversation with one of my PAs this morning because I submitted a video that we had worked on last week to the client, and they looked at it and loved it, and I sent it to the PA this morning as well, and I was like, hey, like, I want you to see this final video, because sometimes they don't always see it right away, or they'll sometimes see it after the fact, and we're doing crazy stuff, and they're like, I don't see what you're trying to put together here, but it's fine. We're here to help you, right? And make sure you get the shot list. But I sent it to her, and I was like, hey, like, I want you to see this because you and your vision helped make this possible, right? Like, I'm very much about empowering my production assistants when they're on, because not a lot of them have production knowledge, but they have the right intangibles that for me, I'm like, I can work with that. And I would rather that instead of having someone that is a seasoned trained purist of like, oh, I went to cinematography for school. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I didn't. And I'm like, we're just going to figure this out together, right? Because that's the best part about it. But like, she was like, I love that we've worked together a bunch of times now, and that's allowed us to really start to really piece stuff together for your clients in a high rate, right? And you learn that, right? The people that you can trust, the people that you can work with, the ultimate end goal for the client is, better than what they thought it would be at times too. And that, I think, is worth the price of admission on itself. So the right team is so important, as you hit on.
And that's even when you work with other people within the industry too. Like you and I, for example, we kind of just trusted each other right away, honestly, when it came to working on stuff. So it's more of like, who can I trust in that industry too? Who can I contract out? Especially in our industry, contracting out is huge, and it helps out for small businesses. So trying to find that trust right away is something that's important for us.
How many things have we worked on together? Do you know? Was it 2, 3 things? I'm trying to think how many things you and I have done together. I have it in my notes that you've modeled for me twice.
Yeah, I think we've probably worked together 2 or 3 times on things. I think we've had conversations about working with each other on stuff, but it just didn't pan out within your schedule or my schedule. So, and I mean, that's how it goes sometimes with both of us being on crazy schedules. We can't plan anything. I mean, it took us, a year to go get coffee together and actually see each other in person. That tells you right there on how our schedules are.
100% true. I know. I was like, hey, I'm finally available. And I'm going to be honest. I was so hot during that entire conversation because we had coffee outside in like July or June. And you were on your way down south to like Kenosha for a shoot. And I was like, let's just meet on lunch really fast. and we sat in the sun, and I remember just dying, but I'm like, it's fine. I'm totally fine. We're here. I finally get to see Taylor. But you're right, though. Like, those are the people and the relationships. And I've talked about this with people before, right? Like, we were social media friends, but we never physically met. But the second you walked up, we gave each other a hug, and I was like, yep, like, we're best friends now. Like, we're totally fine. Like, I loved that conversation. I've loved what we've worked on together before as well. And I think that goes such a long way, because I don't see you as a threat. I don't think you see me as a threat. Like, we are generally like, no, like, Taylor's amazing. Go work with Taylor. Baxter's awesome. Go work with him, right? Like, we're cheering each other on. And then, like you said, when we get to work together on stuff, it's even better, because we get to put our heads together and say, awesome, how can we make this project even better for a client as well?
And I mean, even with yesterday too, I didn't expect that I was going to be seeing you yesterday. It was just one of those things that I got brought onto that project, and it was just like a good conversation between me and you showing me memes during the shoot. It's like, that's the kind of relationship that we have, and we just goof off, which is great.
Correct. Exactly. I want to talk about the things on the wall behind you, because you have a couple awards sitting back there, which I think is important to acknowledge. You are well respected and well regarded as someone that is one of the best in your industry. And I know that you don't probably like bragging about yourself, but I think there's a polite way to also say, hey, my hard work is paid off, and I'm grateful that I've been recognized for a couple of things. Can you talk about some of the things on the wall behind you?
Yeah, so this one right behind me, that I won back in 2023. So that is the Best of the Lakeshore. Miller Highlights took first place for that, for advertising and marketing. So that is kind of where a lot of the blow up of my company started, when it came to the marketing side, which was great. I mean, it kind of gave me that recognition that people are seeing what I'm doing, and I fully utilize that for marketing afterwards. I mean, I still do. We have been runner ups last year and the year before. 2023. So 2022 was a runner up. 2023 I won, and then last year was a runner up again. And that's going against big companies that have multiple employees. Like, they're not doing it by themselves. They have it figured out, and I'm just little old me, and a couple people that help me out. So yep. So that's Best of the Lakeshore, and then the one next to me. So that is a Future 15 award winner plaque, and that is through the Chamber of Manitowoc County. And with that, they pick 15 recipients that are under the age of 40, and those are people that are making a difference in the community. So that just shows that I am being involved in the community. One thing that I said, and I already said this before, is that I am fully involved with getting the youth to understand what this industry can be and how I can help along the way. So I think that's where I got most of my recognition from that, and I am greatly appreciated. I didn't realize how big of an award that was until I was sitting there in that room and people were talking, and I'm like, how am I recognized as one of these people? And like, how does that even happen? A lot of the other people were like teachers. Okay, so they get seen every single day showing children, like teaching them. How are people recognizing what I'm doing? And I had to really sit back and reflect while I was sitting there, because that's where I started comparing myself a little bit, like, okay, how involved I am. But then I realized that I shouldn't be comparing, because I did do the work. I am doing the work now that people are actually acknowledging. So that award is huge for me, and I am like, it was great. It was great to receive that. And then that's just my vision board for this year.
I love that. I've been reading it over your shoulder the whole time. I'm just like, oh,
innovation and balance and
staying hydrated, no stress.
Yeah, and the one thing that I love on there is saying creating a legacy is hard, because I want to remind myself that it's not easy, and it's my reminder that I am doing the work to get there. So yeah, that's just my little vision board that I put together this year. It's great.
I love it. I had a conversation speaking about like creating a legacy is hard, right? It's a different apples to oranges a little bit, but talking with my kids this morning, one of my kids was like, I don't want to go to school this morning. He wasn't feeling the best. And I was like, hey man, like there are times where I don't want to go do the shoot. I don't want to like, cause I'm like, which I, hate saying because I'm so grateful every chance I get, but like sometimes it's hard to be motivated to do the shoot, or if it's a long drive or whatever it is, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, like I know it'll be great once I'm there, but like, just some of those things, right? Like there's going to be days where it's going to be tough, but you still got to get out of bed. You still got to get after it and do your best, right? Like that's all I'm asking you to do. I'm like, I'm not saying you got to hit a home run today, but like do your best, right? Like get on base, right? Get a double if you can, right? Like do your best today and, reset and do it again tomorrow. Cause I think that we haven't talked about burnout on this show yet, but burnout I feel like is such a huge issue for people that do what we do. I know a lot of other people, of course, and a lot of other industries do that as well. But I always ask this question to everybody that I interview because I'm always curious because, like I said, burnout's a real deal. When you are not working and doing what you do, how do you take care of yourself?
So I'm going to be completely honest here. I was terrible at all things self-care. Terrible. I would burn myself out all the time, and in my head it's just work, work, work 24/7. Terrible mindset to have. Do not do that because mentally you will suffer, and I have, And when it comes to how I now approach those things, I have found different modalities that help me. So during those burnout phases, I would get really bad anxiety if I was just going to the store. It was very hard for me to walk in and not have like a complete panic attack and then run out. And now I've gotten to the point that I'm fine with that and I can, live my life normally again. And through that, I'm not sure if, well, Ashley and Lauren. So Ashley and Lauren are founder and co-founder of Rise Up Experiences. I connected with them back in 2021 and I shot their very first conference. And from there, I started to really understand what self-care kind of was. I didn't fully dive deep into it, but I was like hovering. I was observing of what was happening. And since then, they're best friends with me now. And I love that because we keep each other accountable on things. We check in with each other. And they have really helped me figure out how to take care of myself first and not always be working all the time and worrying about others. So now what I do is I do breathwork sessions with Ashley. So that is a reset breathwork that is about a half hour long, if not a little bit shorter, of breathing. And Ashley guides me through that. And then after that, I usually do a sound healing session with Lauren, which she uses crystal sound healing bowls and plays different frequencies. And within those frequencies, it like completely calms me and mellows me out. And honestly, during those sessions, it brings my creativity back up too. And I feel like I can fully immerse myself back into my work. So that's kind of the route that I've been taking.
I love that. I always love asking that question because every single person I've asked has a different answer. And that's why I asked. Part of it, I'm very forward with this. I'm like, part of it's my own selfish curiosity of like, well, what do they do? Because I'm always looking for different ways, right? And, sharing how I try to take care of myself as well. And I've realized too that there is a big difference when you're married and you have kids as well, because my self-care looks a lot different than yours than compared to everybody else that I've talked to, right? Because some people have kids, some people don't, some people are married, some people are single.
I just have a dog, so.
Right, yeah. So like everybody's different, right? As far as like what your obligations are. I had a meeting before this and I joked with them because I was like, so many people, she's works in our industry as well. And she was like, yeah, she's like, I know I'm not made for the 9 to 5. She's like, I like waking up at 9 a.m. and then going to the gym and doing my day from there. Right. I'm like, I know. I'm like, people are always like, oh, you got to be in the 5 a.m. club. I'm like, I am in the 5 a.m. club, but I was up with my 9-month-old at 5 a.m. this morning because that was when he was ready to wake up. Right. So my 5 a.m. club looks a little different. Right. I'm like, I work out at night if I can, because that's generally when I feel like I have the most motivation, because I'm like, great, all the kids are in bed. My wife goes to bed pretty early. I'm like, I can have 30 minutes or 20 minutes to lift weights or ride the bike or whatever it might be. But then typically I will also then watch a course on something, because I have a couple of courses that I'm a part of. So I'll watch stuff on lighting, on gimbal movements, whatever. So I'm like, I'm trying to learn a little bit, like while I'm also taking care of my body. Or I can edit photos on my iPad while I ride the bike. That's what I did last night. And I was like, great, I feel like I'm being productive and I'm being productive all at the same time. And you get off the bike after 20 minutes and you're like, oh, that was great. Like, I feel like I accomplished so much because you took care of yourself and you took care of a client, and you get that stress out of your head too, which is so nice. But I've seen the breath work. I've seen some of the other things. I've done the cold plunges, right? Those are a lot of fun to do too. I will not do it when it's 7 degrees outside. I'm sorry. I know my level of insanity doesn't go that deep, unfortunately, right? Like, I love doing them though. And my kids have even done them too, because they realized that it helps dad, and dad feels so much better after he does it. And so my boys are very much in the copycat stage of life right now. They're like, well, we want to try. I'm like, oh, okay, like, sure.
They're always watching.
Yes. So I'm like, great. If I can set that good example, I try to do my best with that, and certainly keeps you honest. That's for sure. Before we go, I have a couple other quick hitter questions for you. So try to give me your best speed answers for these if you can. What is your favorite type of content to shoot?
Recently, my favorite type of content to shoot, there's two. It would be retreats. So when I'm traveling and doing retreats, I love capturing content for those. And documentary films. I love capturing those because it really lets me immerse myself into that person's life and tell their story. So,
I love that. What excites you the most about content creation?
I think the creativity aspect of it and seeing what performs well and what doesn't, because you might spend an hour on some content and get 5 views, but you might spend 5 minutes on content and it gets a million views. So just kind of seeing what happens there. Yeah.
I love it. What is your biggest social media tip or trick?
Keep posting. They always say quality over quantity, but honestly, the quantity really helps get you exposed a little bit more. And as long as you're doing it in a smart strategy way, it will help you in the long run with your business.
I love it. Who or what is your dream client?
Oh, that's a good one. Who or what is my dream client? I would bring it back to the documentary. I think if I could do a documentary on, like the Packers, that'd be cool. Yeah, I'm a big NFL girl. Even though the Packers lost in the first round, I still love them. But I think if I would do a documentary on like one of the players or even coaches, it'd be cool because obviously we've seen the documentaries with Lombardi and, stuff from there, but we're in the new season now, new season of life with these new players. There's more stories to be told.
I love that. And last question, your biggest goal for 2025 is?
Baxter, these are hard. I don't know how you can have me do a fire round with
it's meant to get you to think, but it's also meant to like some people have this readily and some people don't, and that's okay, but it's meant to like stimulate and see what you can come up with.
I think my goal is to learn something new that will continue to enhance my business in a different way. Like learn a different skill. I think that would be good.
And to do a shoot with Baxter
I don't know if that's the
Colburn.
answer.
And to do more shoots with Baxter.
Let's do a couple shoots with Baxter.
That would be great. I would like to actually do a shoot where we actually are shooting together. You've modeled for me before, and we've done some of that, and we've never like, all right, I have a camera, you have a camera, let's go shoot together, right? I think that'd be fun.
Okay, so that is the Colburn Creative and Miller Highlights goal together, I would say.
I love it.
Yeah.
Taylor, if people want to learn more about you or get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can contact me on Instagram at @Taylor_Miller or fill out our contact form on millerhighlights.com.
Fantastic. Taylor, you are a gift and a blessing in my life, and I'm so grateful to know you and for what you do for so many others. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here today.
Thanks for having me, Baxter. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And a big thank you to all of you for tuning in for another episode of Iconic Creators. As a reminder, we are always here every Monday for you. Episodes drop on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me by looking on Facebook or Instagram at Baxter Colburn or at Colburn Creative Co. is the best way to do so. As a big thank you again for Taylor Miller joining us, and I will see you on the next edition of Iconic Creators. Enjoy your week.